Good morning and welcome once again to another Living Hope Today study. We're grateful you're here, and today we're actually going to get into Numbers chapter 1. Remember where we are. We're in the vicinity of Mount Sinai. Moses has been taking instruction from the Lord for literally months. They've been camping here about 11 months, almost a year. We'll see that in a second. In the end, what are they doing now? They're preparing to take the promised land. That's the general direction, the drift of the people. Now, we know, because we live today, we can read the story, that this doesn't happen right away. It's a 2-week walk from where they are to the promised land, but it's going to take them 40 years to get there based on their disobedience. But we're not that far yet. Let's don't get ahead of the story. Let's just look at what this great book begins with. You remember the book of Numbers is from the Hebrew word Bamidbar, and it means in the wilderness. But another reason it's called the book of Numbers is because there's a lot of counting going on in this book. In fact, let's start with that. The Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. Pause. Just look at how historically concerned the Bible is. We're not talking about some philosophical floating sentence, like beingness and oneness and all of that. We're talking about the Bible writing down specific location, specific timing, exactly where and when these things are occurring. This all should give us confidence that the Bible is not only instruction from God in how we should live and how He has saved us, but the Bible is also an accurate historical document that took the time to make sure we understood exactly when these things occurred. So what does the Lord want? As He speaks to Moses here in Numbers 1, He says, take a census. What does that mean? It means count them. I want to know how many there are. All right? Well, how many who? Look, take a census of the whole Israelite community by their clans and families, listing every man by name, one by one. We're going to find a fighting force. You and Aaron are to number by their divisions all the men in Israel 20 years old or more. There's the criteria. If you're under 20, you're not in the census. But if you're over 20, you are, or 20 or more, who are able to serve in the army. Okay, you also have to be fit enough to be counted. All right. So God is taking account of His people. Now, God already knows who's in the camp. I mean, He's omniscient, right? Why would He do this? Well, I believe He's doing it to assure or reassure the people of Israel that their numbers are strong, so that they have the confidence in Him to lead them to the promised land. One man from each tribe, each the head of his family, is to help you. Okay, another comment before we move into this counting, and that is, notice how specifically separated every tribe is. Remember when we came out of Egypt, we had 12 tribes that came out of Egypt. All right, those delineations have not been lost. There are still 12. Let me show you. These are the names of the men who are to assist you. Notice these guys. You have Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Those are the sons of Jacob. That's where these tribes come from. Now they're shown as people from those descendants, right? Eliezer, Shelumiel, Nahshon, Nathanael, Eliab. And I don't think you're going to find these names in the local baby name book, but nonetheless, there we are. And if you want to study those names, feel free, because there's lots of them. One thing that happens in the book is Joseph is specifically designated as two tribes. Remember, he had two sons while he was in Egypt. And so he'll end up with two. Ephraim, don't let me misspeak here. I know he has Benjamin. What's his second? Is it Ephraim? I think it is, yeah. His second son. Then Dan, Asher, Gad, and Naphtali. All right. Then we get into numbering them. These were the men appointed from the community, the leaders of their ancestral tribes. They were the heads of the clans of Israel. Moses and Aaron took these men whose names had been given, and they called the whole community get together on the first day of the second month. The people indicated their ancestry by their clans and families, and the men 20 years old or more were listed by name, one by one. Everybody counts as the Lord commanded Moses, and so he counted them in the desert of Sinai. So imagine this company of well over 1 million people in this camp for the last 11 months or a little more. Now we're going to count the men 20 or older who can fight. From the descendants of Reuben, the firstborn son of Israel, all the men 20 years old or more who were able to serve in the army were listed by name one by one according to the records of their clans and families. The number from the tribe of Reuben was 46,500. Now I thought I could just go through the next 20 verses and continue to read these off, but I thought for time's sake, the general pattern of the verse we read continues. Reuben, he is distinguished as the firstborn. He has 46,500. Simeon has 59,300. Gad, 45,650. Judah, 74,600. Issachar, 54,400. Zebulun, 57,400. Joseph has Ephraim. Oh, I did get it right. That's good. 40,500. Joseph has Manasseh, 32,200. I did mess up, didn't I? I said Benjamin. No. Ephraim and Manasseh. There we go. Then Benjamin, 35,400. Dan, 62,700. Asher, 41,500. And Naphtali, 53,400. That's what's stated in verses 22 to 43. I just want you to think about this with me, church. Today, the modern Israelite, the modern Jew, really has no understanding of what tribe they come from. I mean, they might say they come from the tribe of Judah. Many would claim that. Some say they can still trace themselves back to the Levites. But in 70 AD, when Titus Vespasian wiped out the temple, the genealogical records were wiped out as well. We use that to prove that nobody could really claim to have the lineage necessary to be the Messiah because the records have been wiped out. But I want you to see in Numbers chapter 1, the lineages are clear. Everybody understands whose tribe they're in, and now they've numbered into the hundreds of thousands the men that are available as 20-year-old or more men who can fight. These were the men counted by Moses and Aaron and the 12 leaders of Israel, each one representing his family. All the Israelites 20 years old or more who were able to serve in Israel's army were counted according to their families. The total number was 603,550. So we have over 500,000 guys that qualify as able-bodied fighters. That seems to be the point of Numbers chapter 1. The families of the tribe of Levi, however, were not counted along with the others. Okay, we're going to have an exception. The Lord had said to Moses, you must not count the tribe of Levi or include them in the census of the other Israelites. So don't count them. So God has set these men apart to serve him at the tent of meeting, at the tabernacle. And God says, I don't want them counted in the census of warriors. Instead, appoint the Levites to be in charge of the tabernacle of the testimony over all its furnishings and over everything belonging to it. Okay, so you Levites, instead of being counted for war, you're going to be appointed to take care of the structure that God instructed in so much detail in the book of Exodus and how to build it. This is where the presence of God dwells. This is where the sacrifices are made. This is where the cloud rests and the fire rests. Cloud by day, fire by night. This is symbolic of God's continual presence in the camp of Israel. The Levites are to take care of that. They are to carry the tabernacle and all its furnishings. They are to take care of it and encamp around it. We'll see that more clearly as these tribes get distributed around the tent of meeting, around the tabernacle, but the Levites are in charge of being right around it whenever the tabernacle is to move. Okay, we're going to see that when we get to chapter 10, that God finally is ready to lead his people out of the desert of Sinai. Okay, when that happens, here's what the Levites are supposed to do. Whenever the tabernacle is to move, the Levites are to take it down. Whenever the tabernacle is to be set up, the Levites shall do it. And guess what? If you think you can get extra help from your other tribes, you better not. Anyone else who goes near it shall be put to death. God says, look, I'm serious about this. This is sacred. This is holy. I've appointed these guys to do it, and that's it. Don't come near it if you're not a Levite. The Israelites are to set up their tents by divisions, each man in his own camp under his own standard. In other words, think about the organization God has imposed on his people. The Levites, however, are to set up their tents around the tabernacle of the testimony so that wrath will not fall on the Israelite community. The Levites are to be responsible for the care of the tabernacle of the testimony, and the Israelites did all this just as the Lord commanded Moses. So what do we learn here? Well, the men 20 and older have been counted. There's over 600,000 able-bodied men that can fight in Israel's army. Okay, we got that. What else do we get out of this? Well, the Levites are instructed to not be counted to be fighters, but instead to be people that take care of all the things God has constructed through his instruction in the last several books. All right, so now we have the basic structure. We'll see how the camp is to be managed, and we will eventually see how the travel is supposed to be conducted. God, again, as the theocrat, as the one over his people, is issuing direct commands because of his desire to bring his people into the promised land. What we'll start to see by the time we get to chapter 3 is that interplay between the rebellious hearts that sin against God by lack of faith and by unwillingness to obey, combined with God's eternal purpose, so that God's going to move his purpose forward, even if his people don't want to move forward. It's very, very fascinating. I pray you serve him well today, church. God bless you.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.